Excuse me, kiddo. Now don't sit on this. Hello and welcome, or welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. This is going to be the second in a series of poetry readings in which I read my own poetry, focusing in each reading on a book or two of my own. Yesterday I put one together about embodiment and release, my first book. Today I will be reading from Sonnets, my second book. Next up after this will be The Soul's Refinement. After that, perhaps I will pick something out from the Requiem, and after that, something from Against Holy War. These first 5 books which I wrote were published under the imprint of Non-Fit Press. This is before the days of print on demand, where publishing and trying to get distributed and so forth was a demanding task, one which I gave my all to for a few years and then set aside. It is probably a natural step in the course of one's progression as a poet to want to tackle the sonnet form. My first book had a few sonnets in there, and I thought I would just show you some famous books of sonnets. William Shakespeare, of course, probably the greatest influence and the pattern. If one is going to write a book of sonnets in the English language, this is likely to be one's pattern. Elizabeth Barrett Browning did some. Edna St. Vincent Millay did some. This is something more recent, so this would not have influenced me at the time. What year did this come out? 2015, so it's fairly new. As far, and I should say, Claude McKay's sonnets have had a big influence on me. This book was published in 2001, I think. Oh, 2000. But it was written, I am not sure, I would guess 1994. I don't know that I have any record of when it was written. As things went on, for a period at least, I would copyright things when I had finished writing them and then copyright them again when I published them, if indeed I did. But that grew to be a costly endeavor. But at this stage, I hadn't even started to do it. So I've done a lot of videos pertaining to the sonnet form, and I will put links to all of those in the description box. Now, all of my non-fit press books, if you think you want to obtain a copy of any or all of those, you will have to go to an online vendor and just see what comes available. Everything after that, such as is available, will be at my Lulu site. Lulu.com is a self-pub house. Now, not every book that I have done has gone through the self-pub process. It is really not a poet's job to like what he writes or to feel anything about it one way or the other. And so there have been cases when something came out and it is kind of like giving birth, and you may think it's a wonderful process, but sometimes the proper response to giving birth is ugh! And so in many cases, at least a few cases, the book that I wrote, I just filed away and have not looked at since. So I will probably not be making a video about any of those titles, but those that I have printed in one way or another, I will do. And that's not to say that all of the ones that I saw through to the printing process are ones that I have any great feelings for either. The first 5 books I know the best. And then, as I said in the last video, I kind of got onto an autopilot. This is my book of memorabilia, including from those years when I was really hitting the circuit and trying to get word of my book or books out there. So Sonnets is one of the few books I've done that has gotten reviewed, and I thought that I would show you the largest. Well, I'm not going to show you, I'll read you a little bit. This is from Expansive Poetry and Music Online. Most of these reviews would have been at online sites, and mostly they were fairly small, maybe a paragraph if I was lucky, a short paragraph sometimes. But I thought that I would just read a little bit from this. I'm just going to skip over a lot. Sonnets by David, this is by Arthur Mortensen. Sonnets by David Novak opens with 5 sonnets of unabashedly religious content or reference. While this would distress most editors, some would not suffer. Certainly Richard Wilbur's doesn't, though Novak's lack the fine ironies of Wilbur's, and one wouldn't describe the first 5 as pious, felt a fatal flaw by many. As to diction, I don't believe I've seen I or thou used in a poem after Edna St. Vincent Millay's earliest collections in the late teens and early 20s. Still, one doesn't usually call to one's creator, hey you, so the usage of the more formal thou is not so disturbing. I use it even in poems addressing my lover, which, as he notes, has a precedent even in Millay. This was a common criticism of my poetry throughout its course. I'm not sure how it gets into this, but I'll read it. There is no shame in acknowledging what a good ear will tell you. Novak should spend some time with this, as his rhyme patterns are often too easy and predictable. For instance, the rhymes in number 4, hammer, each pair tending to be the same part of speech as unrequited, slighted, spread eagle, regal, prey, clay. Such rhymes strike my ear in a way that the deliberate skewing of scale, perspective, and shape in primitive art strikes my eye as dangerously close to preciosity. Look at what, cut, place, disgrace, poet, know it, please. Pale fail in number 5, or never yielding, wielding, care, despair, soul's holes in number 76. In number 120, though, despite a similar pattern, the poem works far better because the rhyme words do different things, as hell, quell, against, commenced, escape, nape. Though it too fumbles in the last couplet, past, repast, which in English is an identity, not a rhyme. It also has the feel of a forced rhyme. I have to end this now. In using such simple rhymes, one has to be awfully good to avoid preciosity. I think Novak in these poems falls a little short, although those later in the book noticeably improve. So to some degree, he was trying to find things to say. All in all, the review was a positive and very warming review. But I'm sure that the later poems did not improve. I'm one of those poets who, having achieved at a certain level, I just kind of stayed that way throughout with little improvement. Eliot said as much about Kipling, and I believe that that holds true for me. I had not known what an identity was until I read that, and it is something I have tried to avoid. But sometimes, even though you try to avoid a thing, one slips in because you weren't paying enough attention, or sometimes there's just no other way around it. So, and you have to know a little bit in order to avoid them. So for example, early on, and I probably used it, I would rhyme a line, A-L-I-G-N, and the word line, L-I-N-E, which both come from the same root, I believe. So if they come from the same root, they should be verboten. But if they have a different etymology, then it's okay. So there's all these little rules which you learn as you go along. Nobody starts out knowing these things. And ultimately, the poem is the thing anyhow. So if the poem works, it doesn't matter what problems or what rules you break. So as with some recent videos where I've done 20 or so sonnets, I think I've picked out 21, and I will begin with the very first sonnet in the book. I wasn't sure how, it was always my want to list my books if I could. So at that time I had written, well, by the time this was published, I had written 4 books, and then those were the plays I had written. So on to that first poem. I'll try to get these out. That our Lord Jesus died upon the cross, I must affirm, although it is denied by many, whose denial is their loss. For in the soul of man, I know he died. He died, and ever dying must outlive the longest exhalation of sad breath, who came to teach rude mankind to forgive, and also, by the by, refuted death. Lord Jesus, Jesus, Lord, the Word is thee, the Word made flesh, and flesh forever free from its constraint of petty profiteering, forever to endure, though words may pass, confute, confound, perplex the mind from hearing, from calling and recalling what he was. When I put these little slivers of bookmarks in, it's hard to get them out. Thank you for being patient with me. I often encourage people to play the videos sped up. You will hear a lot of echoes from Shakespeare, for one thing. As I say, that is one's model. To tell the ancient tale, but make it new. This is the poet's task, what he has done since ancient time, and must forever do until on humankind sets its last sun. I mine my ancient grief, my ancient love, the vast disaster and defeat of all my forces marshaled, trying to disprove harsh legends of the great sea's jealous thrall. The sea of love that spares not man nor whelp, who undertakes the journey cross its breast, and racks them, heeding nary calls for help, sobs of remorse, regret, nor all the rest. But thou hast overwhelmed my humble bark, and I am all alone, and it is dark. Actually, it was the next one that I mistakenly was thinking that I had selected. So I'll up the count to 22 and I will read that one. By all my friends forsaken, more or less, but left to ruminate upon my ruin, the wastage and debris behind me strewn, do I survey, as ever on I press, onward from darkness into darkerness, nurtured despair my one and only boon, as with it I my loneliness festoon, for no one heeds a man in his distress. The soft caress, soft word that might have come to change it, now could only come too late. For I insensate am, struck blind and dumb, as all against her kind I nurse my hate. And yet I can't deny that she was fair, although untrue, and sweet beyond compare. So aside from the ruminate upon my ruin, which is directly in homage to Shakespeare, just line after line you can hear echoes of the bard. And so I address him. And many of the poems in this book and the poems which I have selected do address poets, my forebears in the literary tradition of English. Shakespeare, forgive the wrong I do thy lyric, in echoing thy verses in my lines, my crude attempts enough to give an earache to thee long buried, vulgar anodynes. How can thy influence on me diminish when thy own sonnets taught to me my trade? Though till my days of versifying finish, I cannot hope a something as well made. Vulgar attempts of piecemeal sloppiness my verses are, the lot not unified, reflective of my life. I but digress from that high standard thou hast dignified. Such is my lot, but let it be confessed, if mine are not so good, they are my best. So there again you have another identity, unified and dignified. That's just poor versification. But I am sure I did not know at that time. And There is no other way but through. You know, this channel has been for the last couple of years a booktube channel, and with the fascist assault on our government in my country, the United States, I have totally quit reading. And so forgive me, I am devoting myself to, instead of talking about books which I have read, reading poems. Largely I am reading from Against Fascism, my book of poems against this whole fascist attempt. I will link that in the description box as well. It is also available at Lulu. But since I have one or two, although whenever I read my own poetry, I see my subscriber count go down. But possibly one or two of my booktube friends who have stuck around and see this may appreciate the first line of the next poem, because it contains a literary reference which is not at all to a poet my forebear. Nor not against, oh, and I should say, this also, though, exhibits the influence of Shakespeare. I just love how one or two of his sonnets just kind of start and you feel like you're just in the middle of something. In one case, I think they don't know what the first four words are, but it's just a beautiful way to begin a sonnet. Nor not against the lathe of heaven run, though many men will try, and thereby perish. For though we finish having not begun, our memories of dreams we have to cherish. Or else what is there, love, our whole life living, to make the loss of it have been worthwhile, unless the empty promise of our striving shall clutter up a corner in a pile. Useless effects and promises unkept, shall our unbidden devastation spread into the secret corner where we slept, and now pollute the very marriage bed? The subterfuge of lust and sacrilege now sack and sacrifice our heritage. So, of course, the immediate allusion is to Ursula Le Guin's book, The Lathe of Heaven. But of course, she derives her title from something in the Chinese. Okay, so well, I will make my comment after reading this. The poetry I write is what I read, wrote Robert Service, and I go with him. In our technique and aims we are agreed, though scholars scowl his poetry to skim. The cackle of the geese and barnyard fowl preferred to eagles soaring overhead. The lesser poets, this was his avowal, instead of those great mighty masters dead. Longfellow too, and many more besides. You have to trust your heart. The reputation bestowed by scholars bald are but asides, tools to secure their own self-preservation. Cummings or Service, honest craftsmen all, with ye, my brethren, do I stand or fall. I've had videos here and there defending Cummings against assault. For me, I don't care that what the outcome is of a poet's work. It is the sincerity of the effort that went into it. I bring up Longfellow too, perhaps not so much because he is a lesser poet. I don't really look at poets in that way, and in his best, he stands with the best. A poet like Robert Service perhaps does not, and a poet like E.E. Cummings perhaps does not. But the great mighty master's dead. You know that wonderful poem by Longfellow. Come, read to me. I forget what it is, and pack their tents like the Arabs or whatever, and silently steal away. That poem. I can't think of the title right now, but read to me some poem, not from the mighty masters or whatever, not from the bards sublime, whose mighty footsteps echo through the corridors of time, etc., etc. So he gets referred. I mean, there are references throughout. I'll see if I can find this one. Deliberate fiction, poetry, or else fictive deliberation. Either way, if not in fact, the truth it always tells expresses our experience today. More precious is the light so fairly that dances in your eyes than any sonnet, that all my verse I'd sunder cheerily, and even Shakespeare's, just to gaze upon it. To gaze upon it, but you have departed, and rain beats on the panes so wild without. Within, my gloomy ritual has started, retracing pains that life is mild without. Because we quarreled, you harshly slammed the door, departing here despite the mad downpour. So this is my second book of poems and my first book of sonnets. A couple of years ago, or last year, I followed up and did another book of sonnets. And that poem, has a poem which responds to it, and I just happened to fall open to it. I had forgotten to bookmark it. So now I think we're up to 23. Fictive deliberation, poetry, or else deliberate fiction. This it is. And I return, but now my eyes can see with clarity what in youth seemed amiss. It felt indeed a grandiose conundrum, but knowing now the place for the first time, the ancient mystery seems almost a humdrum. Now I, who was the stranger, know my climb. Indeed, if this slim sheaf be my farewell, then I bestow my fondest salutations upon my muse, who taught me how to tell, and stayed by me through various deprivations. I warmed my hands about love's open flame. Now I depart, a wiser than I came. You can hear references in there as well. So I am, even though this was written, what did I posit, 1994, I am much more familiar with the poems in this book than anything in this, which, as I say, was maybe last year. And I fully expected it to be my last book of poetry, but this thing about fascism kind of intruded. So this one makes reference to Edna St. Vincent Millay, who was not well regarded at the time of this writing. Her star has risen since. More precious is the light, so wrote Millay, better than half a dozen poets, not ever excluded as she is today, from compilations and her work forgot. These are the scholars making their decisions. Based on what motives do you dare to ask? Subjecting work that's good to rank derisions, in glory mediocre stuff to bask. These hombres necios is who they are, anthologists discreetly shaping our legacy to the future in their care, through ignorance or else abuse of power. But we that know, we honor thee, Malay, no matter what the literati say. Hombres necios is a reference to Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, one of my influences. I mentioned scholars. The previous poem said Scholars Ball. That's a reference to Yeats. And all of this about anthologists. I mean, to me, at this point, it seems a little bit small in focus, but I did a lot of that in this first book, defending poets, criticizing poetasters, or what, however you say that word. But anthologists do play a vital role in our bestowing the literary tradition to our posterity. And I should comment that on every Thursday, going back for a while, booktuber Steve Donahue has been reading from a specific anthology of, I think it's 20th century American poems, something like that, with commentary on all of the poets. And he often discusses the behind-the-scenes political machinations that go into inclusion or exclusion from an anthology. So I recommend his channel and recommend this series about the anthology. It would be nice if he had taken a better anthology as his vehicle. So this begins with a quote by Emily Dickinson, who is unidentified. "Pass to thy rendezvous of light," she wrote. "But madness was it, that divinest sense, which saved my life, a little dinghy boat with which I might traverse the vast immense. So shall we thank our predecessors then, who left behind them signs for us to follow? Shall we exalt them higher than all men, with praise to raise them, though that praise be hollow? What do they need from us? Not anything, except our strict observance of our duty, not in allegiance to an earthly king, but him above, whose hidden face is beauty. This we may do, with never need to tell what early frost beheads our asphodel." I don't think it's an asphodel in the Emily Dickinson poem, but the frost beheads it at its play in accidental power. And asphodel is certainly a word that she would use. I have referred to Emily Dickinson's having saved me. Here I noted it in print, as I have noted it elsewhere in print. But I should say that I have met other people people who were not poets, who gave her the same credit. So this poem follows upon a poem after having seen an exhibit at the Art Institute of Chicago. That would tell me when I was writing this. I should look it up. An exhibit at the Art Institute by American artist Horace Pippin. What do I know of art? Not anything. So that when passers-by declare as crude the half of it, I have no arguing, because I'd rather see an honest rude that critics, skeptics, or the multitude dismiss for its technique, if it affirms what truth I've witnessed and does not exclude an aspect, and in no uncertain terms. At base we mortal men are lowly worms that have been given glimpses, though but rarely, of God's great glory, underneath which squirms the pegged soul pinned to human squalor squarely. These glimpses call out the artistic soul to tell the truth blood-charged, but tell it whole. And I'm just noting that that is a fairly well-executed Spencerian stanza. There are others in here that are not well-executed. And when I say that, all I mean is that these are rhymes that are not the easy rhymes. When one is a young poet writing one's first true book and a book of sonnets on top of that, one's goal is also to try to impress. So I tried sonnets in different forms. I think the review suggested I would have done better just sticking to Shakespearean sonnets all the way, but that was not how I was feeling. I should add that this includes my first usage of the sonnet form invented by poet Claude McKay. My video about sonnets talks about this more. Then shall I plumb the underworld and seek in shadows pleasures shadowy and new, because you left and now refuse to speak to me, although my deep contrition's true. Then let me seek tonight a rendezvous with someone I have never met before, someone who's very different from you, and who I'll never see when it is o'er. Tomorrow night another, and again still yet another, since you say to hell to me, and all my wasted hope have slain, my misspent folly, loving you too well. But yet, if I could talk to you tonight, then all my darkness would be turned to light. So my deep contrition's true refers back to that poem, Untrue Contrition, from yesterday's reading from Embodiment and Release. It's so hard to get these little narrow bookmarks out. So this is, there are 3 sonnets paying homage to the brightest star of English poets. And this is one of those. Thou youthful flower of accidental power, too early didst thou bloom for thy own good, but held to scorn by pundits of the hour, deriding what they never understood. Thou hast withstood them all, John Keats, and thou, immortally in verse, shall live while voice gives rise to English tongue, though even now it suffers great abuse. But yet rejoice, let us rejoice in thee, the erstwhile living, who carry in our hearts a glad memento to cherish while we live amidst great striving, pale England's best approach to quattrocento. Verse painting of such delicate refinement as makes a panacea of confinement. So see there again, refinement, confinement. That's no good. And it's a bit confusing when I say, while voice gives rise to English tongue, you have to try to be a little bit more aware of that and avoid that kind of possible confusion. It's impossible to avoid this kind of thing, though. That's the great mother tongue that we use here. And of course, accidental power. That's obviously referring back to that same Dickinson poem. Oh, did I miss one here? Yes, I did. Oh, okay. I missed one that's a sonnet in tetrameter. Let me give you that. Sorry. Lithe limbs my limbs did once enfold. Soft lips my lips did parting kiss. Such grace as man may once behold, then parting from forever miss. Sweet breath with my breath intermingled, as passion pressed us close together in unison, as bodies tingled, not knowing which was either, neither. Light murmured words of deep import, as tuned my ear to their caressing, as gentleness became our sport, gentility our only blessing. Wild days of love, yet numbered few, and since 'tis years since I had you. Wild Days of Love, of course, refers to Emily Dickinson. Wild Nights, I'm guessing. And there was something else here, but I'll just skip on. I will not cease from mental fight, he wrote. To be a poet is to keep on fighting huge mental battles, but of little note, as scarcely intimated to in writing. My battles I have fought and largely lost, my mental habits, disability increasing daily at so large a cost in effort to maintain stability. Shabby equipment scarcely meant to deal with these enormous clashes I am facing, my vague attempts to ascertain what's real, despite the errant patterns I've been tracing. As life's incumbency demands a scheme, as Blake declared, I'll make one from a dream. So the major reference there being William Blake. He said something about, I have to devise a system lest I be enslaved by another man's. So that's the reference there. And of course the famous line, I will not cease from mental fight. But shabby equipment is a nod to T.S. Eliot. I just put those lines up in their Spanish translation probably a week ago, no more. And this expresses a thought which I have voiced numerous times on this channel, and I didn't realize I had actually put it into a poem. My verse is like a scaffolding whereby my soul I hope to rescue from perdition, although what I have witnessed by and by but makes me doubt if I may see fruition in this, my petty efforts of contrition, when largely looms inside a harsher bent that forces me against my best volition, and contrary to claims I'm innocent that I have made, to see my best intent foiled, the charges brought by my accusers against me steeled, seamless, and unbent, enough to make me one of the refusers against my will, as often men accused forsake their right to be by wrongs abused. I think that's all one sentence, which is kind of curious. That's another Spenserian, not as well handled, I don't think, but as I say, it's not really my place to judge. What Dante did was different. Dante saw within his eye the consequence of action, and how by process as derived of law, despite what we profess, despite our faction, despite all party, reputation, section, nor how vociferous if we are false, superb though very low in genuflection, that as we sow, so shall we reap, naught else. For it is our proximity to Christ determines to what sphere we're relegated, our given talents, howso we sufficed, each with his portion he was delegated. Wherefore, dear Lord, my conscience never calm cries out unto thy Son for his sweet balm. This is one of my favorites just because it reflects my early influence of Swami Vivekananda. And it just tells an anecdote which was one of his teaching stories. He, of course, came to the Parliament of Religions held in Chicago in 1893. Vivekananda, when he was in town, had many words to say to us, dear Lord, how each one as a frog is living down deep in a well, believing it the world. Sisters and brothers of America, did he begin his talk of toleration, declaring all as subject to the law, an indivisible, united nation. When that religious parliament was held, no wonder many people stood aghast. And 100 years ago, as clear he spelled out how in thy great scheme the first is last, the meek exalted, and the high made low. And many were amazed to hear him so. What a magnificent speaker he was. You can hear a little of Longfellow in this poem. But of course, today, far from having a parliament of world religions in this country, and far from a man such as Swami Vivekananda being lauded and touted as the next best thing, he would be rounded up and sent to a concentration camp. People just here on vacation, people here for conferences and so forth have had such things happen to them. That is how far we in the United States have fallen. How far indeed we have fallen. Then, weak in mind and in my body weaker, I think upon the love we used to have, when everything was given to the seeker. So much we spent where other people save. But like some fatalistic falling star, although we fell to earth a clump of clay, yet none can say we didn't travel far, or claim unbrilliant what we did essay. A brief conjunction, never men and women were meant eternally to never part. So love, a clinkered shale of spent bitumen, shall leave its traces in the human heart, which I memorialize for all to see what happened in our most amazing spree. And then the poem that follows just repeats that Shakespearean trope. I don't have to invent for these poems. I just have to detail what I see in you, so to speak, which is indeed beyond just being a literary trope. It's also the truth. Truly, I tell the truth when I declare I have a simple-minded feebleness that so encloaks my vision everywhere, that what I write but makes my most seem less. For she whom I was blessed in the possessing of far outshines the murky, inky lines in which her virtues I go on professing, like some world-ending madman seeing signs. Yet I have seen in this world my world's end, when she departed from me, truly harsh, in vowing she would be no more my friend, whereat I fell like one lost in a marsh. The deep miasmal smoke forever churning, but clouds my sight, although my heart is yearning. I think that was the one of those two that I had selected. More on that theme. I knew some time ago that you were not mine, though your body lingers here with me. But I must not disparage what was fraught ever with debacles to harsh degree. So thou must go. It is as it should be, departing here before the dream's eclipse transform into a madness, killing thee by killing me, though longing for thy lips. The greatest grace a woman or a man may be possessor of is knowing when to leave before love has outspent its span, believing vainly hope may spring again. Yet many poems have vouchsafed, it is true, love can revive, but never lacking you. Now that's that fourth line I said, ever with debacles. Some people say that word debacles, and I can go either way on it. I had to make a quick decision. To me, it doesn't matter. How much? Oh, we're getting near the end. That's good. I'll add one. I'll read both of these. Excuse me a second. So this comments on the criticism about the these and thous and some of the language in my poems. My style is artificial, this be said, yet something underlying it there is approaching truth, though love forever fled, now takes its throne in heaven's, not earth's, bliss. Heavenly, that's a meaningless conception, save that to my experience profound, when I saw thee that was my love's inception, no other word apply, myself disowned. Heaven, to which I clung with my mind blunt, although it the rest of me consigned to hell, a stunted reprobate, misshapen runt, I proffer thee my thanks for what befell. For thou hast rescued me from mine own self, and from the restless quest for useless pelf. Like rotted flesh with worms, my dull brain teems with thoughts of you, encompassing my night, long night of restlessness, devoid of dreams, except such as my loneliness doth write. Truly, 'tis better never to have tasted the moist-mouthed kiss of such a love divine, for evermore to feel one's days as wasted, subsequently for former love to pine. Though I may one day find another lover, as to thee in some slight degree resembles, yet I may never live those gone days over, at memory whereof my faint heart trembles. But yet a man can't help but reminiscing on vanished love that he continues missing. I'm starting to get tired, I think. This one seems as though it were designed for today's Christian nationalists. These Christians, at least in name, are large proponents behind this fascist and white supremacist movement in my country, and espoused by the current regime in Washington. These so-called Christians need to take a good look at themselves. So this from, what did I say, 1994, whatever year the Horace Pippin exhibition was at the Art Institute. Lord, if I am a Christian, let it be the kind that hearkens thy command, forgive, not like so goddamned many who will see divergent viewpoints not allowed to live. Divergent as from childhood conceptions as they maintained, not in the forge of reason tested, which is to say professed deceptions, and from what Jesus taught, false, fallen treason, that masquerades in glib self-righteousness. God, much as I do love the word of Jesus, so equally do I despise the mess, false followers who twist it so it pleases their petty dogmas. So do I despise what these have made, their petty, rancid lies, which were identifiable even in 1994 or whenever it was that the exhibition of Horace Pippin was held at the Art Institute of Chicago. So it has been my wont to close out with something from Against Fascism. I will spare you. It may not do well to try to squeeze too much into something. So this is my second book. The first book was Embodiment and Release. The third book, The Soul's Refinement. The fourth book, The Requiem. The fifth book, Against Holy War. So these five are all the non-fit press titles which you can find at Bookfinder or whatever your preferred used book vendor is online. Thank you for stopping by my channel, and please stick around as I go through the course of my various books.